We've had so many updates in the last year, I'm honestly losing track of everything. But the latest one, I think, is just like a long time coming because of the last year has just seen like the most crazy amount of AI content taking over. Like it's never been easier to create 10,000 articles in a few hours. And I think ultimately that's like what this is in response to. Everyone got swept up into it. Like we used to scale content by scaling writer operations. And now it's like people thought, oh, cool, we can shortcut that. And a lot of people didn't care. And maybe those same people didn't care before about the quality of the content coming out. But when you really do look at some of these sites and some of the stuff going out and some of the spam that people find on the search results these days, like it makes sense that Google's been under a lot of pressure from the SEO community to like fix this and respond to it.
Hi, and welcome to the Optimize podcast. My name is Nate Matherson, and I'm your host. On this weekly podcast, we sit down with some of the smartest minds in content marketing and SEO. Our goal is to give you perspective and insight on what's moving the needle in organic search. Today, I'm thrilled to sit down with Ben Goodey, founder and strategist of Goodey Marketing. Ben is also the founder and creator of How the Fuck, where he provides fantastic resources for SEOs looking to get tactical. It's been a hectic few weeks in SEO, and I'm excited to unpack all of the recent volatility with Ben today. We chat algorithm updates, bottom of the funnel content, unpleasant truths about SEO, LinkedIn content marketing, and more. Ben, thank you so much for coming on the Optimize podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
For anyone listening to this podcast, if you're not already following Ben on LinkedIn, you definitely should be, and we'll include a link to his profile in the show notes. And Ben, the first question I ask all of our guests is, how did you get into the world of content marketing and SEO?
Yeah, so I got into marketing by kind of default. I got a job at a startup. I actually wanted to work in VC and like finance, and then I kind of realized I hated it when I did. And then I got a job in a startup, and then they had no marketing person. I saw like the need for this and started to fall into that role and kind of jump from startup to startup like that. But like really SEO and content marketing, I was like a marketing lead across like just do anything you can to grow the company was my it's like classic startup kind of role where you had no clear goals or vision, just like do something. I tried everything, and SEO and content was like the thing that worked. It stuck. It was the one thing that like we built an inbound kind of revenue model, like an engine, and it started to really work, and it was consistent. And like I saw the power of SEO, like you don't have to be doing it and spending money all the time. You can actually have leads coming to you every single day or every single month without as much continued effort, and just started to refine my own sort of playbook from there. Took it to like other companies that I worked at, and then eventually went out on my own, creating like my agency, doing this for other kind of SaaS brands and B2B brands. And yeah, that's how I got into it. It's kind of, it wasn't like a conscious choice. It was like I saw the power of it, and I was like, this is really awesome. I want to take it to other people.
Yeah, as I've joked a few times on this podcast, nobody as a kid is like, I want to become an SEO when I grow up and manipulate search results. We all kind of find it in different ways. And similar to you, I actually also wanted to get into finance. Like that was my career path. Ultimately, that didn't end up happening. And I found SEO out of necessity at our first startup because like you said, it can be a really durable and consistent customer acquisition channel. And, it's one where it takes a lot of upfront work and building, but over the long term can be just such a valuable channel. And that's the reason I love it too. But, it's not always consistent. There's a lot of volatility that happens. And, from month to month, like traffic can change pretty dramatically. And over the last few weeks, it's been a pretty volatile time in organic search. There's been a couple of algorithm updates. We've had like the March core update. We've also had the spam updates, and it seems like we're all still trying to get our bearings here. But I have to ask you, like, what do you make of the recent algorithm updates?
We've had so many updates in the last year, I'm honestly losing track of everything. But the latest one, I think, is just like a long time coming because of the last year has just seen like the most crazy amount of AI content taking over. Like it's never been easier to create 10,000 articles in a few hours. And I think ultimately that's like what this is in response to. Everyone got swept up into it. Like we used to scale content by scaling writer operations, and now it's like people thought, oh, cool, we can shortcut that. And a lot of people didn't care, and maybe those same people didn't care before about the quality of the content coming out. But when you really do look at some of these sites and some of the stuff going out and some of the spam that people find on the search results these days, like it makes sense that Google's been under a lot of pressure from the SEO community to like fix this and respond to it.
Yeah. SEOs more than anyone else like to complain about search results, but I do agree with you that like there has been a lot of spam in search results with the proliferation of AI writing tools. But AI generated content is not necessarily like a new concept. Like there was AI generated content back in 2014 when I first started in SEO. It was just of a lot lower quality and maybe less scalable in some ways too, given like all of the tooling that's come out. There's God knows how many AI writing tools on the market these days. Google has said mixed things about AI generated content over the last couple of years, but to me, it's now very clear like they're making a statement here. Like you and I have seen, I'm sure that like, they've taken the axe, they've essentially beheaded like many websites that like I had been tracking in the SERPs. But Google has also said it's not just AI generated content. It could be AI generated content, but it could also be like low quality human written content at scale. But do you think this is more about AI generated content than anything else?
They keep trying to avoid explicitly saying AI is bad, don't they? I think they have like a bit of I don't know, like they have an issue with the language because I guess it's not inherently the AI content and they can't necessarily detect the AI content, but what they can detect maybe is poor quality content, scaling it very fast and that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't think it's a specific problem to AI, but I just think AI. I think the real problem is most people don't know what good content looks like, and so then if you go to them like, I can make you 500 articles this month, like why would you hire a human? Then they don't really know the difference. They just want traffic, and they've been told that that will work. But I always encourage people to think like if you're going maybe you'll manipulate the search results and get traffic to your site and it works for a bit, but it's really really hard even for like a writer that you pay like £500 a month for an article to write a good article that will convince someone to buy your products or like to like actually educate them in a valuable way. I think even that's hard. So like the amount of like tiny detail that goes into a good article is just like that's what you should be focusing on and trying to get better at. But like AI nor like $100 an article writers can do it really.
Well, I have a couple follow-ups. So you mentioned you're not sure if Google can detect AI generated content. Do you think they're trying to, or they just don't care? They have other methods of detecting like low quality content at scale.
I think they are probably having a big internal existential crisis at the moment because they can't do that. I don't know if they are trying to or they're trying to figure out how do we stop this problem.
Do you think Google is trying to detect AI generated content, or that they're confident they can detect what is low quality content in other ways?
I think that's ultimately what their search algorithms are trying to do is like detect quality and surface the most relevant and best resource for that question and for the searcher's intent. And it is easy to manipulate. And that's what the whole of SEO is about. A lot of the time it doesn't work, especially in like B2B software. It's like the classic listicle is always at the top and it's not always useful.
Well, we are going to talk about bottom of the funnel content, and I'm known to love listicles, so we will get into that. But you mentioned like we need to create great content or fantastic content. I guess I'll pose the question to you: what is great or fantastic content?
When we're talking about search content, it's often like a different thing, I think, because I think great content, you could argue, is the one that answers the searcher's question in the best way. And I think that's always a good tell. Like, have you actually given them a satisfactory answer to what they needed, their problem? So, like, solving the problem behind the search is good quality at its like basic, like core, I think. But I think if you look at it maybe like zoom out again, there's a framework that I always use called like the Lima framework, which is someone came on my podcast actually, Lily Ugbaya, and she told me all about this like framework that she uses. And it's a really great way of looking at content quality, I think. And so Lima stands for like logical, explicit, memorable, and actionable. And those are like how you should build content to make it really good quality. And I think that's a good place to start. Like is your content structured in a logical way? Are you being explicit? Like, are you not using sentences that like say like this is really great for helping you improve your marketing, but you don't explain how it's great or why it's great or why this is the best way rather than another way, or like why you know like why this is best practice today rather than and how it's changed. Like being extremely explicit with like really good examples to back up all your points. And then so then memorable is the next one, and that's more about being unique and insightful, and yes, yeah, basically trying to convey this information in a way that a bit more like how journalists do. Like if you go to like National Geographic and read how they do it, like it's not just like beautifully written, but it's like the person went to the safari and they have lived in that area of Africa their entire life and they know everything about the locals, and like do you know what I mean? It's like how that for me is like the peak of quality. So yeah, I mean, and then actionable is the A of Lima, and that especially is important for B2B content. Like, do you actually give this person the tools to leave reading your article with like the ability to take action and go away and solve that problem for themselves?
And from a conversion standpoint, because I know you work with a lot of like B2B and SaaS businesses, I imagine like everything that you've described would also be just really helpful from a conversion standpoint too, because you're giving that potential customer like that next step. You're building a relationship with them. You're convincing them that you're knowledgeable. And I imagine like regardless of it ranks or how that visitor actually gets to your page, like the process you've described would also be pretty impactful from a conversion standpoint too.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's so many things for conversion like that help in a conversion standpoint. And I guess we'll get onto like bottom of funnel content in the next bit. But yeah, I think like being like if it's the kind of more middle and top of funnel type of content, like and more educational topics, the more kind of those like Lima framework points you can hit, the better, because like you need to make yourself memorable like to the bottom of the funnel. Like you're already quite high in the funnel, so you need to be so useful that you do build a lot of trust, and you do like be the article they save and like look at for later and remember your brand when they need that.
Or link to, hopefully, if they've got a website. And your example of National Geographic resonates with me because one, I've always loved National Geographic, and on recent episodes of this podcast, we had Brett Ferris on, and he's currently ranking for a keyword, Orange Theory Fitness Reviews. It's like a gym studio chain here in the US. And like Brett actually went to Orange Theory for 30 days and like recapped his experience. He took pictures, he took videos. It was like a 7,000 word review by Brett written over 30 days of going to Orange Theory. And it felt like I was having a conversation with Brett when I was reading that post, but it was also extremely thorough. And then we also had a guest on the podcast, Ash Reed, who was in the couch reviews business. And he was like physically purchasing and reviewing these couches. And so I do agree with you that like thinking like a journalist, like what would a journalist do if this article is going to be published on Wall Street Journal is kind of that new bar that I've been operating from. But I do want to talk about the bottom of the funnel. I get asked about the bottom of the funnel all the time. That's where startups really want to start. Like they don't want to write what is articles. I do like what is articles personally, but I want to talk about the bottom of the funnel from a content and SEO standpoint. And recently you posted on LinkedIn that your rule for best insert type of software content is that if we need to shit on our competitors to make ourselves look good, we're already lost. You're in control of the angle, so pick one that makes you look best or better and have clear positioning that resonates with your audience. Would love to just unpack the bottom of the funnel with you. I want to talk about best ofs pages. I want to talk about alternatives pages, but maybe let's start with those best of listicles. Is that something that like you're working on with your clients or are still effective here in 2024?
I mean, yeah, I think it's effective. I think I definitely like it's one of the almost one of the first things that I do with clients is like fill out their bottom of funnel kind of part of their library, which is a really hard thing to do. Like you want to have like all this nice, like interesting content, but then but you don't want a list of 20 articles about softwares, especially your competitors. People really have to get their head around that. Like, why are we explaining our competitors to everybody? And it's like, yeah, it's not quite how it works. Like they don't come to your homepage and then you teach them about your competitors. Like they're actually coming from Google after looking for a list of tools. So yeah, but it's I see them work best. Like the absolute dream is to get a landing page to rank. I think this is the best bottom of funnel. Like if instead of like best CRM software listicle, you rank number one for CRM software and it's HubSpot's homepage. Like that's the absolute peak of conversion in my experience. But the listicle does help you be more competitive, like hit more of those keywords, like also serve search intent a lot better because people want the variety and a few different options and things when they're searching for a best software.
From my view and my experience, it's almost impossible to rank a product or a landing page for a best of keyword. And I talk to a lot of early stage startups. And like you said, they say to me, I don't want to position my competitors on my website. I just want to rank my product or my landing page for this, best CRM software keyword. And I tell them, I think it's going to be impossible because like the search intent of someone searching for like best CRM software or best SEO tools, they're looking to compare something. They want multiple different options. In your experience, is it at all possible to rank what is like a product or landing page for a keyword that needs to be served by like a listicle?
I've definitely seen it and I have clients with it happening right now. But it's normally the case that it's very uncompetitive. Like no one else is really doing it. Like you've spotted a keyword that no one is writing content for, and you will be quickly overtaken by a competitor who does write the listicle. In my experience, but yeah, it's the dream. Also, like you can do it another way, which is to buy a ton of backlinks and spend all your money on that. But most companies I work with don't really have the budget to like really build backlinks and that kind of thing to those pages. And even then it's like still hard to do. Like,
well, that's an interesting point. If in like theory we had a product page that we wanted to rank for like a best of keyword, could we, like if we built a lot of backlinks to it, do you think that would actually be do you actually think that'd be helpful in getting what is like a product page to rank for a keyword like that?
Yes. I mean, the evidence is there. I think a really good example is someone who's doing this well is Gong, like the sales. I always like look at their SEO and think, damn, like that would be quite good. Like they must get a lot of conversions. But if you look at the footer if you go to gong.io and go to the footer, they have like 20 use cases, and each one of those is a product landing page, and all of them or most of them have got tons of backlinks. No one naturally organically links to a product page. So you can tell they've been building links, kind of thing. And you can see they rank pretty well for all these things. So,
well, who's ever running the SEO strategy at Gong, you're welcome to come on this podcast. We will not be linking to you in the show notes, unfortunately. So Gong didn't build a backlink today. Yeah, I agree with you. It is very hard to naturally build backlinks to what is a product or a feature page. And it also would look maybe unnatural to Google in some sense if like one of those pages on your site did accumulate a lot of backlinks.
the advice I've had there, like I would give there, is to not do it at once. Like, don't get 100 backlinks on your product landing page in 1 month. Don't do like obvious stuff.
There are other types of bottom of the funnel too. We had Jeremy from ClickUp on this podcast earlier this year, and we talked a little about alternatives pages as well. So, for example, like if we're a CRM company trying to rank for the keyword HubSpot alternatives or Salesforce versus HubSpot, like in your experience, how effective are alternatives pages or company A versus company B pages if you've got, let's say, two big competitors in your niche?
I think alternatives in particular are good. It's kind of the same thing as a software listicle. But it is a software listicle, basically. Like doing, we recently created one for one of my clients. It's like, yeah, it's literally just like, here's 7 alternatives, but we spend most of it kind of explaining why we're the best option and how we are different and all these kind of things. And I think like coming back to the earlier point about differentiation, and like conversion is all about like how you can really position yourselves against all those competitors and like position yourself as the best tool for that job. But yeah, alternatives are perfect. It's just a platform to give you a chance to do that, really, to be like, hey, we're an alternative.
A question I often get is, with an alternatives page, should 70% of the copy be about us and 30% of the copy be about the other 7 alternatives? Or would you say that we should split the page proportionally across all of the companies included in that list?
It's a very good question. I think it's often where content becomes like, you get the clash between what would be ideal for the reader and ideal for you. And the ideal thing for the reader is that like someone has genuinely unbiased reviewed all of the platforms with no vested interest and has positioned them like in order of most useful based on certain like factors and things, and equal weight. Like you naturally would give equal weighting if that was the case. However, yeah, when it's your platform and your blog, it's obviously you want to talk more about yourself and explain your features. And I think I actually don't have the data on that. It's like something that I'm testing at the moment, to be honest. But I'm doing both. Like I always try to get into like the mentality, the reader mentality. I think it does depend on how you set it up. So if you do like an introduction that's like, yeah, it's best software. Like, by the way, we're going to spend most of this article introducing ourselves, and then we will give you some alternatives and some other like options. But like this is basically our opportunity to explain us. That's one way like you can lead them in nicely,
To play devil's advocate, I'm not convinced that anyone actually reads the introductions on these pages. I think they just get to the page and like start scrolling and they see logo, they see button, they want to click on logo and button. But maybe they do. Maybe they read the intros. What do you think?
I think what most people do is that they probably like I imagine them like, okay, so like the head of department has said to like a manager, like, we need this problem solved. Can you just go out and find like 10 options? And then we'll come up with a criteria together and put them in a list, and then we'll reach out to them and book a demo. That's how I like think like the journey is. So then they type in best CRM softwares, and they basically are just like finding names, clicking them, and opening up the homepage. And I think part of me thinks, however you describe yourself, they're doing their own research on G2. They're going to look like, ask their friends. They're going to properly analyze your website. It's not about what you say. It's about a jumping off point to start the rest of your research.
How important is it to get your product listed on other best of pages or on platforms like G2. Is there a halo effect where if you're in all places, it actually just has a really positive impact on your page ranking or conversion as a whole?
I think it's really important to get on other people's listicles. That's actually like the dream situation is other people are selling you for you, because when you have to sell yourself, it's everyone I talk to skips if you put yourself at the top, they skip you kind of thing. But just because they're like, oh, well, it's obviously biased. And I think basically being on other people's listicles is way better. And I have this one like story about this where I was the first one. This was like in my first job. We were the first one to find a keyword that didn't have a software listicle article written about it. So I wrote one, and we were number one straight away, obviously. And then within the next like 6 months, like 30 people in our industry like saw that we'd ranked for it and wrote their own and removed us from the top spot. Like now we're at like position 20 because we had like a really brand new website and everything. But it did mean that like all of those other listicles put us in that listicle as well. Because for some, how badly SEOs sometimes do research, like they just took whoever's on the top and they used us every single time. And we like definitely continued to get demos from like being mentioned.
That is so funny that you were the first one there. They came along, and when they were outlining their pieces of content, they just looked at what was already ranking and ripped out those best tools to include into their piece of content. And I'll admit that is something I've done before. How do you think about the number of companies to include in an alternatives page or a best of page? And my approach has always been I want to be one more. And so if I see like the top SERP has like 12 of the best CRM softwares, like with my piece of content, I would want to have 13 of the best CRM softwares. That's how I've always done it. Am I doing it wrong? Like, what's your approach to picking that number of companies to highlight in one of these pages?
I think there's a logic to what you just said. Definitely like looking like, oh, well, I may as well choose the one with the most and getting a click that way. I also could argue that like I would click the one that says we chose the best three, like the complete opposite. Like we're not going to find 20. We're going to really look at three and research those ones. Is also like, I'd rather have three in-depth ones than 20 thin ones, but maybe not. So it's just whatever you want to argue. I think one of the things with like SEO and content is you can pretty much argue your way into doing anything. I could create a logic for most things. So I think you need to kind of experiment and see what works.
Yeah. Well, let's argue our way into publishing 10,000 AI generated pages and buying a bunch of backlinks. Now, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I could do that.
Let's do it. All right, let's do it. We're going off script here. So let's make that argument. Go for it.
All right. So I wouldn't release 10,000 pages all at once, but I would, just because I think it's too obvious to detect. But you could release 10,000 pages over a year, let's say, and any of them you could. So I think a good argument for it is the minimum viable content argument, which is like you never know in SEO exactly what's going to rank. Like you hope it does, but then like there's always like this 30% of articles that just don't rank for some reason. And minimum, like why not then just create a bunch of spam articles, and if any of them start ranking, we can tag them and rewrite them in human, and you de-risk this little thing of what's going to rank. So like maybe there's an argument there, like to create a minimum viable base. I still wouldn't do it, but
I do want to chat about some SEO mistakes. On LinkedIn, you recently put out a post about the 14 ways to destroy your SEO strategy. And we're not going to get to all 14, unfortunately, on this episode. But I do want to talk about a few of these. Your fourth item in this list was on focusing on keywords, not topics. What did you mean by this?
I have a really good example of this from a recent client. An existing client who loves to write content as well, but doesn't quite know the SEO behind it. He just wants to write, and he finds a keyword and just writes about it, but then also finds a keyword that's very similar and writes a blog post about that, and then also finds another keyword that's very similar. So it's like he has an article called Best CRM Software, and another one called Top CRM Software, and another one called, yeah, you know what I'm getting at. And I think it's just it's important not to look at the keyword, but the intent behind why they are searching for that keyword. And then you can group all keywords that match that intent. They all have the same problem under one umbrella. Normally, you can write one article and you capture all of those keywords on one article, and it's more efficient. You don't have, because if you had two articles, one is best CRM software and one is a top CRM software, they are just going to compete basically with each other. And yeah, you kind of want to focus your energy a little bit better.
Yeah, they're going to cannibalize each other pretty quickly. And, if you ever confuse Google as to which should rank, I've always found that neither maybe ranks as well as they could. At Positional, we do have a keyword clustering tool, which is meant to take like a large number of keywords and group them down into the articles to write based on SERP results. Have you found that like a keyword clustering tool or a SERP based grouping tool is helpful in the planning process?
Yeah, I always use clustering tools. It takes away a lot of that work for you, like in terms of if you have a huge amount of keywords, like grouping them all is going to take ages. One layer I add on top of that is that like sometimes it clusters keywords. It clusters them based on search results, right? And I think sometimes there is just a gap. Like no one's really written the content for that keyword, so it assumes that you don't need to. And I think especially I have another client who's like in a very, very competitive space. Basically, we don't have like, there's no way we're going to win most of the keywords they would really like to win. Not anytime soon, and not with the budget they have. But a clustering tool sometimes shows you that those like really authoritative sites are winning that. But if you look deep enough, you actually can see that no one's written about that angle or that type of keyword. And so I think like first step, clustering them is really, really, really great and saves so much time. But just sometimes you can find a bit of a gem kind of in it too.
For sure. Yeah, I would say that's a huge weakness of the SERP-based clustering tools is that for companies in new industries where the top 10 search results haven't been SEOified yet, a clustering tool is not going to be as effective. And I just saw this the other day with this company in this very niche financial software industry. The next mistake number 5, you say, is completely ignoring competition. And I talk to a lot of early stage startups and they'll say to me, Nate, like if my competitor is ranking for this keyword, I shouldn't try to rank for it too. And I say to them like, no, there's like a lot of real estate on the first page. Like you can rank for this keyword and they can too. But what did you mean by completely ignoring competition? And that is a mistake people often make.
I mostly think of it in terms of like the authority scores. Like just because you have a CRM software and you write best CRM software, we keep coming back to this example. But yeah, I think, you're never going to beat HubSpot. Like you need to know, like you're not never going to, but you need to know that it's a very long journey. And you as a brand new website with like no backlinks, no authority, like you need to understand how Google works. And like, it's just not a wise decision to make your first article something that is like incredibly difficult to win. Simple as that. Like if you ignore all your competitors and competing content, it's a big miss. And a lot of people just write content, realize it, don't know why it doesn't rank, don't know why it's not doing well. Whereas like I think the best kind of SEO strategy you can build would take into account where you're at right now and what you can win and what's achievable, and then like build towards those more competitive things.
Yeah, you've got to get them addicted on the long tails so they can start to see some sort of forward momentum instead of starting with, we're going to say it again, best CRM software. And If anyone is listening to this podcast and is currently ranking on the first page for best CRM software, like please reach out to me and come on. Like we'll talk more about this particular keyword. You mentioned on LinkedIn as well unpleasant truths about SEO, and you highlighted 4 of these unpleasant truths. One of them is that you believe that SEO is only going to get more and more competitive. So I have 2 questions here. Is SEO the most competitive it's ever been? And then as a follow-up to that, what do we do given that like SEO is just a lot more competitive than it used to be?
I think by default, SEO is always as competitive as it's ever been, like every moment kind of thing. I think it gets more and more competitive the more people invest in it as a channel. And I think what like the best thing to do is to like look at what these big brands, look at who is winning. Like, have you seen Glenn Allsop's like the 20 brands who are dominating Google right now, and they make up like most of the searches go to these sites. Like that's the dream. Like you have such a competitive moat. Like you're so high authority. Like you've been around for so long that you can almost write about anything and win it. You know, like you can see like Forbes Advisor now is like they're basically the G2 of Forbes. Like they've just created their own listicle for every software space, and they charge you if you want to be at the top. You can sponsor link. Like they've created such an authority that they're just able to game Google, and it's like it's the flaw in all of it. But like, yeah, if you want to stay competitive, you kind of need to think like that. Like invest in your authority, build your brand, build a site that establishes you as like, yeah, you can write anything and it will help you, and you'll get ahead naturally, kind of thing.
Yes, SEOs love to hate Forbes. I was even at the Brighton SEO conference in San Diego towards the end of last year, and Danny Sullivan called out Forbes specifically. So even Google is thinking about Forbes. And Forbes, if you're listening to this podcast, come on, let's talk about it. But yeah, you mentioned Glenn's report that he put out from detailed.com, which we will include a link to in the show notes. It was such a great report, and it highlighted that 16 companies essentially own the first page of search for many keywords. And I thought the most interesting takeaway from that report was that when Glenn analyzed about 10,000 search results for affiliate keywords, 15% of the time, those companies owned 4 or more of the top 10 search results on the first page for a given keyword. So not only are these like SEO powerhouses just ranking for every keyword, they're ranking for every keyword with multiple different properties on the first page. And then when you add Reddit to the mix, now you're talking about 2 or 3 SERP spots potentially available for a given keyword. And so, there's 10 spots on the first page, but in all reality, there might only be 2 or 3 spots on the first page that are up for grabs.
It's crazy thing. I always try to just remember that like with the Reddit thing, like I think the conspiracies are all just like a little bit real, like Google is a business, and like all of these companies are businesses. Like they're playing the game that you would probably play if you were in their position.
Well, so what do you make of the recent Google and Reddit deal?
So what is it like? So the Reddit basically has agreed with Google to sell their data for AI training and things, haven't they? But also somehow they're also ranking in the top 10 for everything now.
Yes, right before their IPO, which is very, very timely. If you've seen the graph of like Reddit user growth in the last 2 quarters, it was essentially like flat, and then like last 2 quarters, it's like spiked. And I've heard people say like, why? And I point to the helpful content update back in September, and like there's your answer. But yeah, this new deal essentially, Google is paying Reddit for, I believe, unexclusive access to its data set to then like train Google's models. So I don't know, like, is there something under the hood that's happening between Google and Reddit that we don't know about? It's unclear.
Honestly, I can have an opinion, and I guess I do have an opinion on it, but it's hard to know what's happening, and also if it's even a bad thing or not. Like Reddit's Reddit's data like they have is like extremely valuable. I can see why Google would want it for training, and I see why Reddit stopped anyone crawling it pretty quickly. They also stopped people deleting their profiles, which all their content would go. So like now, if you delete your profile, your content stay, like your comments stay and things. So you kind of, yeah, everything you've ever said on Reddit is like there, which is for AI, I guess. A lot of people, I'm one of them who like, if I have a problem that I want solved on Google, often I would put Reddit after it. But I don't think that little bit of insight means you should just rank everything in Reddit like more. It's like that seems to be what they've done. Is like, oh, use it as an excuse. Everyone loves having Reddit in the search results. Let's just overrank Reddit. But it's so gameable. It's so like, how do you on Reddit the same question gets asked like 10 times a day. So like, how do you know which one is to show? Like, I don't know, like if it was the answer just to blanket.
Yeah, I saw a customer of ours attack one of those like product plus Reddit keywords. So that, for example, like best CRM software at Reddit, and they created what was like a listicle of the best Reddit threads on a given topic. Is that just a terrible idea?
What? Sorry. So they made a listicle within Reddit that's just a list of the best.
So they made a listicle of Reddit threads related to that topic. So they're trying to rank for the keyword like best CRM software Reddit with a blog post that highlights different Reddit threads about that topic.
So they're like the ultimate Reddit.
They're like the ultimate Reddit listicle thing.
Well, do you know what? Like, if Google makes these like big changes and doesn't think about the consequences, there's SEOs are just going to take advantage until they stop it. It's like just the iterative game of SEO, and I think it's not. You may get like a short term win, but I just don't. I think if you want to build that long term competitive advantage, you got to do it. Like you got to do it properly.
So one more unpleasant truth. You mentioned that SEO and content is not a viable growth option for everyone. For which companies does SEO just not make sense?
There's been a couple of companies where I've just been like, it's not exactly viable for you guys. One is like super innovative. Like say if you were ChatGPT when they first launched and you wanted to grow into like the stratosphere like they did, like 100 million users in like 4 days or whatever it was, like that wouldn't be, it's not an unlimited resource for them. Like they wouldn't have had all of these search terms available. So if you have a load, like I think it's like it can be kind of useful for everyone as like one part of their growth strategy, but it's not if you have like really, really ambitious growth plans. It's not like PPC where you can just spend all your money in one place. It gets in, you can do your core terms and then it gets increasingly less conversion rate as you like go up and up the funnel and away from your core subject and things. And if you have really innovative technology, you often don't have anything at the bottom of the funnel. So if your product's worth like $10 a month per user and you only have like 200 people searching a month for kind of what you do, you can see the max opportunity available to you very quickly. If on the other hand, like I have a very innovative product for a client and their annual revenue per client would be like 100 grand, £100,000. And they only need a few conversions a month to be like really doing well and like to be super happy with it. So I think depends on your growth plans, depends on your product. I think those are the key factors. Depends on your budget as well and your ability to be like patient about it. Some areas it just works really well. Like if you have a really established business like an accountant and it's like accountant in my local area is a huge search, and that's a really quick use case for SEO you can see the value. If you're an innovative SaaS product, conversions are a little bit harder to come by, I think. And it's about that fact, like you want to build like repeatable, viable, steadily growing, channel, ideally. Yeah. So that's kind of what I mean by it. You just got to really think through your industry dynamics and things.
For sure. Makes a ton of sense. And if it's okay with you, I've got a big list of lightning round questions. Does that sound good?
Yeah, I love that.
All right. So the first one I've got here is eat. Do you love it or you hate it, and why?
I love it as a guideline, and what you should go towards for your users and your readers. But yeah, I don't think it's like an exact ranking factor, and people can worry too much about it. Maybe
When should a startup or a company start worrying about backlinks?
from day one, I think.
As far as SEO consultants go, we have a lot of listeners on this podcast who are SEO consultants or are listeners who have hired SEO consultants. What percentage of SEO consultants or agencies are actually good ones?
50%. I very, very rarely take over from someone who is happy, but then also I'm biased by people who've just left their SEO agencies. So I don't see a lot of good work out there
So, what's the number one reason people are unhappy with their previous SEO agency?
because I think from like my client point of view, it's always like, well, nothing's happening. And they always say, oh, it's not working for us. I'm not sure why. And if you look at what they're doing, it's because they've spent 6 months locked into a contract where they've just optimizing 20 meta titles a month, and that's what they've agreed to. And the client doesn't know anything about SEO, so they've like, oh, we need all these technical fixes. Oh.
Don't get me started. Oh my God. A little part of me dies every time I see one of these like cookie cutter SEO reports where it's like, you're missing meta descriptions on 6 pages and like, LCP is zero point 0.1 above where it should be. Like, we need to go and address that. But I'm convinced it's because there's a large amount of SEO consultants that actually just don't want to like do hard work. Like, they just want to check like easy boxes, or they outsource it to people who don't know how to actually do the hard work.
Agreed. I think business acumen kind of thing is a really missing trait in the SEO community. Like it's there's a lot of work that really doesn't make growth happen, but it may be useful from an SEO perspective, but it's not the most useful. And like the ability to prioritize around actual like impact seems to be missing. And I don't know, I've never worked for an agency, and I don't know if that's I mean, I don't know if it's a culture thing within agencies or not. But like when I see agencies work, a lot of it is like it's about presenting these huge technical reports and doing like 4 hours a month of work and charging like a lot. And then, yeah, it does definitely bugs me because I get like my pricing gets compared to theirs, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm not offering the same thing. Like I will actually grow your business for you. But like because I worked in the startup world where it's like, yeah, you have to grow or we're going to die kind of thing. So I like have that mentality, but I think agencies get it maybe, yeah, positioned around technical fixes and easy work. And
The last thing that kills me is toxic backlinks. Like, we need to take care of those. To the client that doesn't know about SEO, like toxic backlinks sounds like this like we're gonna die if we don't use the disavow. But anyways,
so true, man. Or same now with content. It's like, oh yeah, they're doing a good job. They give us like maybe 6 articles a month, and then you look and it's like literally pasted from ChatGPT, and it's not ranking, doesn't do anything. What's the point?
yeah. Well, we've unleashed and we've unlocked, hopefully, within that content. I don't know if you see that all the time, but I do with AI generated pieces. Um, and I do want to talk about LinkedIn a little bit because you do such a great job on LinkedIn. What are like one or two big things you've learned about content marketing on LinkedIn?
I really recommend everyone starts posting on LinkedIn for you if you're a marketer wanting to learn marketing, because I think it teaches you so much about like, writing in simple, concise ways, or like writing engaging stuff, like knowing what works, even just like understanding algorithms and that kind of thing. Um, I think I think also it teaches you how to like if you grow an audience there, I think you understand how to grow an audience anywhere really. And it's really hard work. It takes a lot of like obsession to like make content that's good and engaging and people like. It's yeah, it's a good. I think yeah, highly recommend just like going and posting and trying to build it. It's like a little test for yourself. And
Is it like SEO in some sense where it like compounds over time and maybe your first like 1,000 followers is a lot harder to get than the incremental 1,000 followers from, let's say, like 10,000 to 11,000?
yeah, yeah, there's a definite like flywheel kind of thing with it. The more people who follow you, obviously, the more engagement you get and the more you can tap into there. It's like there's a definite kind of, virality effect on LinkedIn.
And as far as newsletters go, you've got the How the Fuck newsletter, which is one of the best. And I'd be curious, like, what are one or two of the big learnings you've had running this newsletter?
I'm really happy with the newsletter. Like it was really slow to grow. Like honestly, the first 2 years, I was still had a full-time job and I got to like 1,000 followers. And then actually when it was more my full-time job doing the newsletter and the podcast and stuff, then it grew much quicker. But I think it creates like a more deep relationship with the reader if they get it from you every week. And like it's always good, I think, to draw people like deeper in their connection with you. And like you have LinkedIn and they follow you like every day, but then if giving people another step to learn from you somewhere else is always just a good way to build your authority on like another platform. I think like surround sound, like podcasting as well. Like if someone listens to your podcast and then they get your newsletter and then they also see you on social media, like you kind of, from a pure like business point of view, I think you just kind of you give them like a bit more of a surround sound.
Yeah, you want to be everywhere.
Yeah, and then if on top of that they Google something and they find you on search, it's like, oh cool, I know these guys. Like suddenly it's like the touch points add together in your head.
Yeah, and going back to Eat, I'd hope that like Google can get this signal too, that surround sound, which says like, Ben is an authority on this given topic space.
Yeah, if they could crack that, I mean, that would be good.
I have a lot of confidence in Google. I know a lot of our podcast guests like hate Google and tell me that Google is dead and Google's the worst, but I think people don't give Google enough credit. Like at the end of the day, like it is the most popular way that people find information online for a reason, I think.
One of the reasons it gets so much shit basically is that we're marketers and I think we know all the tricks of marketers, but like most people don't. Like even with this year, like we've just done a massive spam and AI update. Me personally, I've never come across spam or AI stuff naturally in the search results. Like I've just had all my needs like fulfilled by Google if I like have searched for something or I like, had a healthcare issue I needed to like, I actually think the content's pretty solid in a lot of areas. Yes, if I type in like, as someone who knows marketing strategy quite in depth, like if I type in how to make a marketing strategy, I'm like, this is obviously like not very good, but that's for me. And if you're a beginner in that and you're starting your own business as a small business, like maybe that would be really useful. So I think just because people do need to think just because you don't like something doesn't mean that it's not useful.
That's something I've been thinking about with our blog because we write about like SEO related topics. And, we published an article about like, keyword search volume. And, if I was writing that article, there's probably 4,000 words of text I could have written about like keyword search volume and like how to think about them and how to not think about them. But at the end of the day, the person who's searching for that probably just needs like a 1,500 word article, which just very basically explains what it is. And so as a marketer creating content often for non-marketers, that's been something I've been thinking a lot about.
And it's tough that it's like understanding it's really easy to start creating content without actually knowing your audience very well. And especially with like seniority and things, people talk about like top, middle and bottom of funnel. And I think most of the time, most content's not even in the funnel for most people. Like I don't know, like if if I target senior SEOs, I don't know if that's like your target market, and or if it's like junior, if it's junior if I target, for example, directors of SEO with like 20 years of experience, like an article like what is SEO or like what is a keyword is like not even in the funnel at all. Like they don't search that. And I think that's like a key thing to think about for people. Like it's not even just far away. Like a what is something keyword could be like actually pretty far down the funnel for that audience, as long as it was like what is, I don't know, something much more complex.
Right. Yeah. What is, TF IDF or something like that?
Exactly.
And last question before we let you go. What is like one thing that you see SEOs spending time on that's just a total waste of time?
AI content. Is that a good answer?
That works. That works. Well, Ben, it's been so great to have you on the Optimized podcast. We definitely need to have you back. And for all of our listeners, we will include a few links to Ben's newsletter, his podcast, as well as his LinkedIn in the show notes. And Ben, is there anything else that you'd like to say to our listeners?
No, but thank you very much. Like, it's been great talking to you guys. Thanks for having me on.